One of the things the 60MK's spec sheet sells hard is that it's the lightest full-frame camera ever made, not just within Canon's range, either, but by any company. It's 75 grams lighter than the Nikon D750, for example. Although that's an achievement in one direction, it's not a point to make a massive fuss about, really, given how heavy top-notch full-frame lenses are. Plus, we've become so accustomed to using mirrorless cameras like the Panasonic Lumix GH4 and Olympus Pen F that the EOS 6D2 feels massive by comparison. Frankly, compared to the original 6D, the Mark II is also a few millimeters less steep. Although you might not notice that in the hand, it's more of an achievement than it sounds thanks to the newly appointed Vari-angle LCD monitor. Finally, Canon is embracing screen-based work in a full-frame camera, the kind of thing that's not only ideal when out on the go, but also a feature some will find useful for still life studio work too. Better still, the screen is touch responsive, meaning you can press to focus and make adjustments. This is Canon embracing the smartphone era and adapting its technologies accordingly, which we've been waiting to see properly implemented in a full-frame DSLR for a while. It works really well, too, despite not being as snappy as a mirrorless camera. It's faster than Nikon's equivalent offering. Up top there's the same optical viewfinder as found in the earlier 6D. It's got a 98% field of view rather than a full-on what you see is what you get 100% frame. That's not the end of the world, but it's a bit of a kick in the side at this price point to not see that outermost 2% of the frame during shooting. We suspect this is an intentional move to try and push those even more pro users towards the pricier 5D MK. Not only is the 60MK's screen touch sensitive, the sensor it's paired with has autofocus pixels on its surface, which Canon terms as dual pixel of technology. In short, this means focusing using the screen is quick. Every bit as good as you'll find in the EOS 80D, which is a great reference point. The 6D2 also pulls in the 80D's equivalent focus system when using the viewfinder, capable of low light focus to 3f. And comprising 45 autofocus points, all of which are cross-type. 27 of them are sensitive to f/8, 9 of which are cross-type sensitive to ensure heightened sensitivity if you're using, say, a slower lens or zoom extender. There's a lot of clout here. Now, that's a great autofocus system, but it's not quite as advanced as the 61-point system you'll find in the EOS 5D4. Again, Canon adding a point of separation between these two cameras to keep them both relevant. Plus, wind your mind back to the original 6D, which had a far more basic 11-point f system and, well, the Mark II model is a considerable improvement. It's not just about the numbers of points. It's about their spread across the frame and sensitivity, which find a happy balance here in our view. With the latest and greatest Canon processor at the heart of the 6D2, that's the Digic 7 chip, there's plenty of oil to keep this full-framer motoring on. It can shoot at 6.5 fps, frames per second, which is pretty speedy. Funnily enough, however, it's half a frame per second slower than the 5D4, a camera that's also higher resolution. So, clearly, that supposedly faster processor isn't being used to the maximum. Again, this feels as though it's about segregating the 6D2 from the 5D4, to the side of the 60MK is a card slot for an SD card, UHS IMAX, just the one of them, too, as a second slot has been swerved, presumably on account of cost and size. Which is a shame for a camera that can shoot both large stills and sizable video files. On the image quality front, the 6D2 introduces a brand new full-frame Canon sensor. It's a 26.2 megapixel one, which we think is a savvy choice. If anything, it's the perfect all-round balance in terms of pixels. The 30 megapixel 5D4, by comparison, doesn't sound like it has a great deal more resolution to handle. But anything greatly over 24 MP, we find, introduces certain complications to consider with shutter speeds, due to capturing movement, resulting in less than perfect sharpness, and greater file sizes. Even with the 6D2 some images would appear sharp on screen, but then we would see the slightest of movement apparent in the 100% scale shot, which we only began to counter for by raising the shutter speed and upping the ISO sensitivity. Canon is clearly confident with this sensor. However, as it can shoot up to ISO 40,000 as standard, when dabbling in 4-figure ISO settings the results are still very clean indeed. We've been shooting portraits upwards of ISO 3200 in evening light and the results have been perfectly good. If you're feeling especially brave, the sensitivity can be extended to ISO 102,400 for ultra-dark lighting condition work. Not that we've found such a setting to be useful in any camera before now, really, which may have some limited value for low-resolution output. At least it's not the mad headline-grabbing 7-figure ISO settings of the Nikon D7500, as the top 3 sensitivities there aren't even usable. No such issues with this Canon. We began to use the 6D2 at a product shoot and found the 7560 pixel RGB plus I.R sensor did a really good job of shooting a black object on white background without having to make too much adjustment. The evaluative metering is linked to the center spot, however. So when we then went to shoot outside we found skies and sun-kissed areas of scenes would quickly blow out into white overexposure. So keep an eye on what you're shooting, and at the very least shoot RAW in addition to JPEG so there's some headroom to claw back detail. One of the biggest benefits of using full frame is just how pronounced scenes can become thanks to enhanced shallow depth of field. With the 24 to 70mm f/2.8 lens used for this test, shooting at f/4.0 gave layers of depth between subjects that can only be achieved in conjunction with such a large sensor. You'll need to select aperture choices wisely, therefore, but get things right and full frame continues to shine. The only thing that felt slightly off in terms of image quality was more on account of the focus system. Using the viewfinder system gave solid feedback of when a focus point had locked on, in live view mode. However, there were times when a shot was confirmed as in focus, but the rather generalist focus area had focused slightly behind the perfect point, which isn't something that happens in advanced mirrorless cameras. On the video front, Canon continues to go light with its offering. The 6D Mark II can shot 1080p at 60 fps max, avoiding the current 4K trend, something Canon is keen to reserve for its higher-end C-series video-focused DSLR cameras, such as the C300. That is, quite simply, the way things are in Canon's camp. Even the new Nikon D7500 offers 4K capture, and we expect its forthcoming larger sensor cameras will follow the same suit. If you are keen for full frame with 4K, then point your eyes to Sony's full frame SLT and mirrorless options as one alternative. Despite terrible battery life, these are becoming a choice option for such capture. Overall, the Canon EOS 6D Mark II is one of the most balanced full-frame propositions on the market. We find its new sensor to be just about the perfect balance of resolution, while the vari-angle touchscreen is a huge benefit that lacks from so many other similar cameras. All of this sees it as a big step up over the original 6D model, a camera that makes far more sense in the face of the 5D Mark IV and 5DS models. It's not quite perfect, though. The live view, while fast, isn't as pinpoint perfect when it comes to focus as an equivalent mirrorless camera. Then there's the viewfinder's 98% field of view, which for a near-pound 2K camera seems like a bit of a kick in the side to not be able to see the outermost edge of the frame during composition. Oh, and there's no 4K movie capture, which is no surprise from the Canon DSLR, but puts it a step behind some competitors. Nonetheless, if you've been thinking about buying a full-frame DSLR but have been waiting for some of the more modern technologies, touch screen control, a vari-angle screen, Wi-Fi sharing and so forth, then the 6D Mark II does a grand job. For many it will fulfill every need at a far lower price than buying a 5D Mark IV, which gives this full frame a considerable appeal.